All right, about to resume Fangirl, starting at chapter 5. And because for some reason I love doing this at the start of every one of these, yes, if you look over here, you will notice a corgi plush with a fez because fezzes are cool. All right, 5. Please don't make me sit in the hall, Levi said. Kath stepped over his legs to get to the door. I have to study. Reagan's running late, and I've already been sitting here half an hour. His voice dropped to a whisper. Your neighbor with the pink Ugg boots keeps coming out to talk to me. Have mercy. Kath frowned at him. I won't bother you, he said. I'll just wait quietly for Reagan. She rolled her eyes and walked in, leaving the door open behind her. I can see why you and Reagan hit it off. He got up to follow her. You can both be extremely brusque sometimes. We didn't hit it off. That's not what I heard. Hey, now that you're eating in the dining hall, can I eat your protein bars? You are already eating my protein bars, Cass said indignatingly, sitting at her desk and opening her laptop. I felt bad about doing it behind your back. Good. But aren't you happier now? He sat at the end of her bed and leaned against the wall, crossing his long legs at the ankles. You look better nourished already. Thank you. So, what? He grinned. Can I have a protein bar? You're unbelievable. Levi leaned over and reached under the bed. The blueberry bliss are my favorite. Kath actually was happier now, not that she was going to admit it to Levi. So far, being Reagan's charity case didn't require much, just going down to the dining hall together and helping Reagan ridicule everyone who walked by their table. Reagan liked to sit next to the kitchen door, right where the buffet line dumped into the dining room. She called it parade seating, and no one was spared. Look, she said last night, it's Gimpy. How do you think he broke his leg? Kath looked up at the guy, a dangerously hip looking character with shaggy hair and oversized glasses. Probably tripped over his beard. Ha, Reagan said. His girlfriend is carrying his tray. Just look at her. This is one shiny unicorn. Do you think they actually met in an American Apparel ad? I'm pretty sure they met in New York City, but it took them 5 years to get here. Oh, Wolf Girl at 3 o'clock, Reagan said excitedly. Is she wearing her clip on tail? I don't know. Wait for it. No, damn. I kind of like her tail. Kath smiled fondly at the chubby girl with dyed black hair. If God put me into your life to keep you from wearing a fucking tail, Reagan said, I accept the assignment. As far as Reagan was concerned, Kath was already problematically weird. It's bad enough that you have homemade Simon Snow posters, Reagan said. Reagan had said last night while she was getting ready for bed. Do you have to have gay homemade Simon Snow posters? Kath had looked up at the drawing over her desk and Simon and Vaz holding hands. Leave them alone, she said. They're in love. Pretty sure I don't remember that from the books. When I write them, Kath said, they're in love. What do you mean when you write them? Reagan stopped, pulling a t-shirt over her head. No. You know what? Never mind. I don't want to know. It's already hard enough to make eye contact with you. Levi was right. They must be hitting it off because now when Reagan said stuff like that, it made Kath want to laugh. If Reagan missed dinner, Kath would go down to the dining hall anyway and sit at their table. Then Reagan came back to the room later. If Reagan came back to the room later, Kath would tell her everything she'd missed. Soccer Sandals finally talked to Venezuelan Lindsay Lohan, Kath would say. Thank God, Reagan would answer, flopping down on her bed. The sexual tension was killing me. Kath wasn't sure where Reagan went on the nights when she didn't come back to the dorms. Maybe Levi's. Kath looked over at Levi now, sitting on Kath's bed, eating what must be his second blueberry bliss bar. He was wearing black jeans and a black t-shirt. Maybe Levi worked at Olive Garden too. Are you a waiter? She asked. Presently, no. Do you work at the Lancome counter? He laughed. What? I'm trying to figure out why you wear all black sometimes. Maybe I'm a really gothy and maybe I'm really gothy and dark, he said. But only on certain days. Kath couldn't imagine Levi ever being gothy and dark. He had the smilingest face she had ever seen. He smiled all the way from his chin to his receding hairline. His forehead wrinkled up, his eyes twinkled, even his ears got into the action. They twitched like a dog's. Or maybe I work at Starbucks, he said. She snorted. Really? Really, he said. Someday you'll need health insurance and you won't think working at Starbucks is funny. Levi and Reagan were always doing that to Kath, reminding her how young and naive she was. Reagan was only 2 years older than Kath. She wasn't even old enough to drink yet, not legally. Not that it mattered on campus. There was booze everywhere. Ren already had a fake ID. You can borrow it, she told Kath. Say you got hair extensions. Kath wondered how old Levi was. He looked old enough to drink, but maybe that was just his hair. It's not that Levi was bald, or anywhere near bald, yet, but his hairline came to a peak on his forehead, then retreated dramatically above his temples. And instead of letting his hair hang down or forward to minimize it, or instead of giving up and wearing it really short, like most guys would, Levi swept straight up and back with a sloppy blonde wave. And he was always messing with it, drawing even more attention to his wide-lined forehead than he was doing it now. What are you working on? He asked, pushed his fingers through his hair and scrubbing the back of his head. Studying in silence, she said. Kath had only posted one chapter of Carry On, Simon, this week, and it was half as long as usual. She usually posted something to her fanfics page every night, if not a full chapter, at least a blog entry. The comments on her page all week had been friendly. How are you? Just checking in. Can't wait for the next post. God, I need my daily buzz. But to Kath, they really felt like demands. She used to read and respond to every comment on her stories, like they were gold stars, like Mayday bouquets. But ever since Carry On, Simon took off last year. It had gotten too big for Kath to manage. She went from getting around 500 hits per chapter to 5,000 regularly. The one with the heavies on the biggest fan site fic station called Carry On the eighth year fic, and Kath's fanfics page got 35,000 hits in one day. But she still tried to keep up with the comments and the questions as much as she could, but it wasn't the same anymore. She wasn't just writing for Ren and the friends they'd make in the old Snowflakes forums. It wasn't just a bunch of girls trading birthday fics and cheer up fics and cracked out I wrote this to make you laugh stories. Kath had an audience now, a following. All these people she didn't know who expected things from her and questioned her decisions. Sometimes they even turned against her. They trash her on other fan sites, saying that Kath used to be good, but that she lost the magic, that her Baz was too canon, or not canon enough, that her Simon was a prude, and that she overwrote Penelope. You don't owe them anything, Ren would say, crawling into Kath's bed at 3 in the morning and pulling Kath's laptop. Go to sleep. I will. I want to finish this scene. I think Baz is finally going to tell Simon he loves him. He'll still love him tomorrow. It's a big chapter. It's always a big chapter. It's different this time, Kath had been saying for the last year. It's the end. Ren was right. Kath had written this story, Baz and Simon in love, dozens of times before. She'd written this scene, this line, Snow, Simon, I love you, 50 different ways. But Carry On was different. It was the longest fic she'd ever written so far. It was already longer than any of Gemma T. Leslie's books, and Kath was only 2/3 of the way through. Carry On was written as if it were the eighth Simon Snow book, as if it were Kath's job to wrap up all the loose ends, to make sure that Simon ascended to mage, to redeem Baz, something that GTO would never do, to make both boys forget about Agatha, to write all the goodbye scenes and graduation scenes and last minute revelations, and to stage the final battle between Simon and the insidious humdrum. Everybody in the fandom was writing eighth year fix right now. Everyone wanted to take a crack at the big ending before the last Simon Snow book was released in May. But for thousands of people, Carry On was already it. People were always telling Kath that if Kath they couldn't look at yeah. People were always telling Kath they couldn't look at canon the same way after reading her stuff. Why does Gemma hate Baz? Somebody kept uh, Somebody had even started selling T-shirts on Etsy that said "Keep calm and carry on" with a photo of Baz and Simon glaring at each other. Ren bought Kath one for her 18th birthday. Kath tried not to let it all go to her head. These characters belong to Gemma T. Leslie. She wrote at the beginning of every new chapter. "You belong to Gemma," she'd say to the Baz poster over her bed at home. "I'm just borrowing you." "You didn't borrow Baz," Ren would say. "You kidnapped him and raised him as your own." If Kath stayed up late writing too many nights in a row, if she was obsessed over the comments or criticism, Ren would climb into Kath's bed and steal her laptop, holding like a teddy bear while sleeping. On nights like that, Kath would always go downstairs and keep on writing her dad's computer if she really wanted to, but she didn't like to cross Ren. They listened to each other when they wouldn't listen to anyone else. "Hey guys," Kath started typing to her fanfics journal. She wished Ren were here too, to read the journal before she posted it. "So I guess it's time for me to admit that college is hard, or at least time consuming, and I'm probably not going to be updating Carry On as much as I used to, as much as I'd like to. But I'm not disappearing, I promise. I'm not giving it up. I already know how all this ends. I'm not going to rest until I get there." Nick turned around in his desk, and as soon as his class was dismissed, "You'll be my partner, right?" "Right," Cass said, noting a girl in the next aisle glancing at them disappointingly. Probably because she wanted to work with Nick. They were each supposed to find a partner to write a story together outside of class, trading paragraphs back and forth. The point of the exercise, Professor Piper said, was to make them extra conscious of plot and voice, and to lead their brains down pathways they'd never find on their own. Nick wanted to meet on campus at Love Library. That was the actual name. "Thank you for your donation, Mayor Don Lathrop Love." Nick worked there a few nights a week, shelving books down in the stacks. Reagan looked suspicious when Kath started picking up her laptop after dinner. "You're always leaving the dorm after dark. Do you have a date?" She said it like it was a joke. The idea of Kath on a date. "I'm meeting someone to study." "Don't walk home by yourself if it's late," Levi said. He and Reagan had class notes spread all over Reagan's side of the room. I walk home by myself all the time," Reagan snapped at him. "That's different." Levi smiled at her warmly. "You don't rock the Little Red Riding Hood vibe. You're scary." Reagan grinned like the big bad wolf. "I don't think rapists actually care about self-confidence," Kath said. "You don't?" Levi looked over at her seriously. I think they'd go for easy prey, the young and the lame." Reagan snorted. Kath hung her scarf on her neck. "I'm not lame," she mumbled. Levi heaved himself up off Reagan's bed and slid into a heavy green canvas jacket. "Come on," he said. "Why?" "I'm walking you to the library." "You don't have to go," Kath argued. "I haven't moved in 2 hours. I don't mind." "No, really. Just go, Kath," Reagan said. "It'll take 5 minutes, and if you get raped now, it'll be our fault. And I haven't got time for the pain." "You coming?" Levi asked Reagan. "Fuck no. It's cold out." It was cold out. Kath walked as quickly as she could, but Levi, as long as his legs were, never broke an amble. He was trying to talk to Kath about Buffalo. As far as she could tell, Levi had a whole class that was just about Buffalo. He seemed like he'd major in Buffalo if that were an option. Maybe it was an option. The school was constantly reminding Kath how rural Nebraska was, something she had never given any thought to before. Growing up in Omaha, the state's only real city, Kath had driven through Nebraska a few times on the way to Colorado. She'd seen the grass in the cornfields, but she never thought much past the view. She never thought about the people who lived there. Levi and Reagan were from some town called Arnold, which Reagan said smelled and looked like manure. God's country, Levi called it. All the gods. Brahma and Odin would love it there. Levi was still talking about Buffalo, even though they were already at the library. Kath climbed on the first stone step, hopping up and down to stay warm. Standing on the step, she was practically as tall as him. Do you see what I mean? He asked. She nodded. Cow's bad, buffalo good. Cow's good, he said. Bison better. Then he gave her a lazy, lopsided grin. This is all really important, you know. That's why I'm telling you. Vital, she said. Ecosystems, water stables, shrews going extinct. Call me when you're done, Little Red. No, Kath thought. I don't even know your number. Levi was already walking away. I'll be in your room, he said, over his shoulder. Call me there. The library had 6 above ground and 2 levels below. The sublevels were the stacks where the sublevels where the stacks were shaped strangely and accessible only from certain staircases, but it almost felt like the stacks were tucked under the buildings around campus. Nice work in the north stacks in a long white room. It was practically a missile silo with bookshelves. There was a constant hum, no matter where you were standing, and even though Kath couldn't see any of the vents, part of the room had their own wind, and the table where they were sitting. Nick had even set a pen on his open notebook to keep the pages from rifling. Nick wrote in longhand. Kath was trying to convince him that they'd been better off taking turns on her laptop. But then we won't see ourselves switching, he said. We won't see the 2 different hands at work. I can't think on paper, she said. Perfect, Nick said. This exercise is about stepping outside of yourself. Okay, she said. There was no use arguing anymore. He'd already pushed the computer away. Okay, Nick said, picking up his pen and pulling off the cap with his teeth. I'll start. Wait, Kath said. Let's talk about what kind of story we're writing. You'll see. That's not fair. She leaned forward, looking at the blank sheet of paper. I don't want to write about, like, dead bodies or naked bodies. So what I'm hearing is no bodies. Nick wrote in a scowling half cursive. He was left-handed, so he smeared blue ink across the paper as he went. You need a felt tip, Kath thought, trying to read his handwriting upside down from across the table. When he handed her the notebook, she could hardly read it, even right side up. What's this word? She asked, pointing. Retinas. She's standing in a parking lot. She's standing under a familiar streetlight. Her hair's so blonde it's flashing at you. It's burning out your retinas one fucking cone at a time. She leans forward and grabs your t-shirt, and she's standing on tiptoe now. She's reaching for you. She smells like black tea and American spirits. When her mouth hits your ear, you wonder if she remembers your name. So, Cass said, we're doing this in present tense? Second person, Nick confirmed. Kath frowning at him. What's wrong? He asked. You don't like love stories? Kath could feel herself blushing and tried to stop. Stay cool, Little Red. She hunched over her bag to look for a pen. It was hard for her to write without typing, and hard to write with Nick watching her like he just handed her a hot potato. Please don't tell Mom, she giggles. Which part should I leave out? You ask her. The hair or the stupid hipster cigarettes? She pulls meanly at your t-shirt, and you shove her back like she's 12. And she practically is. She's so young and you're so tired. And what is Dave going to think if you walk out on your first date to take care of your stupid blonde little sister? You suck, Nick says, and she's reeling. She's swaying again under the streetlight. Kath turned the notebook and pushed it back at Nick. He poked his tongue in his cheek and smiled. So our narrator is gay, he said, and he's named after me. I love stories, Cass said. Nick nodded his head a few more times, and they both started laughing. It was almost like writing with Wren back when she and Red would sit in front of the computer, pulling the keyboard back and forth, reading out loud with the other at type. Kath always wrote most of the dialogue. Wren was better at plot and mood. Sometimes Kath would write all the conversation, and Wren would write behind her, deciding what Baz and Simon were going, and deciding where Baz and Simon and where they were going. Once Kath had written what she thought was a love scene, and Wren had turned it into a sword fight. Even after they'd stopped writing together, Kath would follow Wren around the house, begging for help when she couldn't get Simon and Baz to do anything but talk. Nick wasn't Wren. He was bossier and more of a showboat, and also, obviously, a boy. He up close, his eyes were bluer, and his eyebrows were practically sentient. He licked his lips when he wrote, tapping his tongue to his front teeth. To his credit, he got over the gay thing pretty much immediately, even when Kath gave gay fiction to Nick. Even when Kath gave gay fictional Nick heavy black eyebrows and periwinkle blue wingtips. Nonfiction Nick had trouble taking turns. He'd start to take the notebook out of Kath's hands before she was done writing, and her green pen would pull across the page. Wait, she'd say. No, I have an idea. You're about to ruin it. She tried hard to make the paragraph sound like Nick's, but her own style kept leaking through. It was cool when she realized he was imitating her too. After a few hours, Kath was yawning, their story twice as long as it needed to be. This is going to take forever to type up, she said. Don't type it then. We'll take turns like this. Kath looked down at the green and blue smudge pages. It's our only copy. So don't let your dog eat it. He zipped up a gray hoodie and reached for his ratty denim jacket. It's midnight. I have to clock out. The book cart the book cart next to their table was still heaped with books. What about these? Kath asked. The morning girl can do it. It'll remind her that she's still alive. Kath carefully tore out the story of Nick's notebook and tucked it into her backpack. Then followed him up the winding staircase. They didn't see anyone else on their way to the first floor. It was different being with him now. Different even being different even from a few hours ago. Fun. Kath didn't feel like her real self was buried under 8 layers of fear and diagnosable anxiety. Nick walked right next to her on the stairs, and they talked like they were still passing the notebook between them. When they got outside, they stopped at the sidewalk. Kath felt some of her nervousness creeping back in. She fumbled with the buttons of her coat. All right, Nick said, putting his arms through his backpack. See you in class? Yeah, Kath said. I'll try not to lose our novel. Our first novel, he said, taking the path that led off campus. Good night. Good night. She watched him go, all dark hair and blue smudges in the moonlight. And then it was just Kath out on the quad. Kath and about 100 trees that she never noticed during the daytime. The library light switched off behind her. Her shadow disappeared. Kath sighed and got her phone. Got out her phone. She had 2 texts from Abel. She ignored them, then dialed her room, hoping her roommate wasn't asleep. Hello? Reagan answered on the third ring. There was music in the background. It's Kath. Well, hello, Kath. How was your date? It wasn't. Look, I'm just going to walk home. I'll be fast. I'm already walking. Levi left as soon as the phone rang. You might as well wait for him. He doesn't have to. It'll be a bigger hassle if he can't find you. Okay, Kath said, giving in. Thanks, I guess. Reagan hung up. Kath stood next to a lamppost so he'd see her and tried to look like the huntsman, not the little girl with the basket. Levi showed up long before she expected him to, jogging down the pathway. Even his jogging looked laid back. She started walking down towards him, thinking she'd save him from the last few steps. Catherine, he said, stopping when they met and turning to walk with her in one piece. In one piece, even. That, she said, isn't even my name. Just Cather, huh? Just Kath. Did you get lost in the library? No. I always get lost in the library, he said. No matter how many times I go, in fact, I think I get lost there more. The more I go, like it's getting to know me and revealing new passages. You spend a lot of time in the You spend a lot of time in the library? I do, actually. How is that possible when you're always in my room? Where do you think I sleep? He asked, and she looked to him. He was grinning. Simon curled on his bed like a wounded unicorn foal, holding the torn piece of a green velvet to his tear-stained face. Are you okay? Basil asked him. You you could tell he didn't want to ask. You could tell he found it quite distasteful to speak to his long-time enemy. Leave me alone, Simon spat, choking on his tears uh, and hating Basil even more than usual. She was my mother. Basil leaned. Basil frowned. He narrowed his smoky gray eyes and folded his arms like he was forcing himself to stand there. Like what he really wanted to do was throw another sneezing spell at Simon. I know, Basil said, almost angrily. I know what you're going through. I lost my mother too. Simon wiped his snotty nose on his sleeve jacket and slowly sat up, his eyes wide and blue as the eighth sea. Was Basil lying? That would be just like him, the prat. From Friends for Life and After, posted August 2006 by fanfics.net author Magicath and Renegade. Which, by the way, those are really cool names. All right. 6. Dad, call me. It's Kath again. Call me. Dad, stop ignoring my voicemail. Do you listen to your voicemail? Do you know how? Even if you don't, I know you can see my number in your missed calls. Call me back, okay? Dad, call me or call Ren. No, call me. I'm worried about you. I don't like worrying about you. Don't make me call the neighbors. They'll come check on you and you don't speak any Spanish. It'll be embarrassing. Dad? Hey, Kath. Dad, why haven't you called me? I left you a million messages. You left me too many messages. You shouldn't be calling me. You shouldn't be calling me or even thinking about me. You're in college now. Move on. It's just cool, Dad. It's not like we have irreconcilable differences. Honey, I've watched you grow a lot. I've watched a lot of 90210. The parents weren't even on the show once Brenda went to college. This is your time. You're supposed to be going to frat parties and getting back together with Dylan. Why does everyone want me to go to frat parties? Who wants who wants you to go to frat parties? I was just kidding. Don't hang out with frat guys, Kath. They're terrible. All they do is get drunk and watch 90210. Dad, how are you? I'm fine, honey. Are you lonely? Yes. Are you eating? Yes. What are you eating? Nutritious food. What did you eat today? No lying. Something ingenious I discovered at Quick Trip. It's a sausage wrapped in a pancake, then cooked to perfection on a hot dog roller. Dad, come on, Kath. You told me not to lie. Could you just go to the grocery store or something? You know I hate the grocery store. They sell fruit at Quick Trip. They do? Yes, ask somebody. You know I hate to ask somebody's. You're making me worry about you. Don't worry about me, Kath. I'll look for the fruit. That is such a lame concession. Fine, I'll go to the grocery store. No lying. Promise? I promise. I love you. I love you too. Tell your sister I love her. Kath, it's your dad. I know it's late and you're probably asleep. I hope you're asleep, but I have this idea. It's a great idea. Call me. Kath, it's your dad again. It's still late, but I couldn't wait to tell you this. You know how bad guys want a bathroom? Wait. Oh. You know how you guys want a bathroom upstairs? Your room is right over the bathroom. We could put in a trap door and this ladder, and it would be like a secret shortcut to the bathroom. Isn't that a great idea? Call me. It's your dad. Kath, not a ladder, a fireman's pole. You would still have to use the stairs to get up to your room, but Kath, a fireman's pole. I think I can do it myself. I mean, I'll have to find a real pole. Dad, call me. Call me, okay? Dad, it's Kath. Call me. It was Friday night, and Kath had the dorm to herself. She was trying to work on Carry On, Simon, but her mind kept wandering. Today in class, Professor Piper handed back the story, and she and Nick wrote together. The professor had filled the margins with A's and drawn a little character of herself at the top, shouting, "A!" She had a few of the writing teams, the people who had done really well, read their stories out loud. Kath and Nick went last, trading paragraphs, so they were always reading what the other person had written. But they had gotten tons of laughs, probably because Nick acted like he was doing Shakespeare in the park. Kath's cheeks and neck were burning by the time they sat down. After class, Nick held up his pinky to her. When she stared at it, he said, "Come on, we're making an oath." She curled his finger around his and squeezed it. Partners, automatically anytime. She curled her finger around his and squeezed it. Partners, automatically, anytime we need one. Deal? His eyes were set so deep it made everything he said more intense. Deal, Kath said, looking away. God damn, Nick said, his hand already gone. We're so fucking good. I don't think she has any A's left after our paper, Kath said, following him out of the room. People will be getting B pluses for the next 8 years because of us. We should do this again. He turned suddenly in the doorway. Kath hip-checked him before she could stop herself. We already swore an oath, she said, stepping back. Not what I mean. Not for an assignment. We should just do it. We should do it just because it was good, you know? It was good. It was the most fun Kath had since she got here, for sure. Yeah, she said. All right. I work on Tuesday and Thursday nights, Nick said. You want to do this again? Tuesday? Same time? Sure, Kath said. She hadn't stopped thinking about it since then. She wondered what they'd write. She wanted to talk to Ren about it. Kath had tried calling Ren earlier, but she hadn't picked up. It was almost 11 now. Kath picked up the phone and hit Ren's number. Ren answered. Yes, sister? Hey, can you talk? Yes, sister, Ren said, giggling. Are you out? I'm on the 10th floor of Shram Hall. This is where all the tourists come when they visit Shram Hall. The observation deck. See the world from Tyler's room. That's what it says on the postcards. When Ren's voice was warm and liquid, their dad always said that Ren and Kath had the same voice, but Ren was 33 RPM and Kath was 45. This was different. Are you drunk? I was drunk, Red said. Now I think I'm something else. Are you alone? Where's Courtney? She's here. I might be sitting on her leg. Ren, are you okay? Yes, sister. That's why I answered the phone. To tell you I'm okay. So you can leave me alone for a while. Okay? Kath felt her face tense, more from hurt than from worry. I was just calling to talk to you about Dad. Kath wished she didn't use the words just so much. It was her passive-aggressive tell, like someone who twitched when they were lying and other stuff. Boy stuff. All right. It was her passive-aggressive tell, like someone who twitched when they were lying. And other stuff. Boy stuff. Ren giggled. Boy stuff. Is Simon coming out to Agatha again? Did Baz make him a vampire again? Are their fingers helplessly caught in each other's hair? Have you got to the part where Baz calls him Simon for the first time? Because that's always a tough one. That's always a 3-alarm fire. Kath pulled the phone away so that it wasn't touching her ear. Fuck off, she whispered. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Okay, Ren said, her voice an edgy sing-song. Then she hung up. Kath set her phone on her desk and leaned back away from it, like it were something that would bite. Wren must be drunk or high. Wren never. She never teased Kath about Simon and Baz. Simon and Baz were. Kath got up to turn off the light. Her fingers felt cold. She kicked off her jeans and climbed into bed. Then she got up again to check that the door was locked and looked out of the peephole in the empty hallway. She sat back on her bed. She stood back up. She opened her laptop, booted it up, closed again. Wren must be high. Wren would never. She knew what Simon and Boz were, what they meant. Simon and Boz were. Kath lay back down on her bed and she shook her wrists over the comforter. Then she twisted her hands in an attempt. Right. Then she twisted her hands in the hair at her temples until she could feel the pull. Simon and Baz were untouchable. This isn't any fun day, Reagan said, glumly at the staring glumly at the dining hall door. Reagan was always cranky on weekend mornings when she was around. She drank too much and slept too little. She hadn't washed off last night's makeup um, this morning, and she still smelled like sweat and cigarette smoke. Day-old Reagan, Kath thought. But Kath didn't worry about Reagan. Not like she worried about Wren. Maybe because Wren had looked like the big bad wolf, and Wren just looked like Kath with a better haircut. A girl walked through the door wearing a red Husker football sweatshirt and skinny jeans. Reagan sighed. What's wrong? Kath asked. They all look alike on game days, Reagan said. I can't see their ugly, deformed true selves. She turned to Kath. What are you doing today? Hiding in our room. You look like you need some fresh air. Me? Kath gagged on her pot roast sandwich. You look like you need fresh DNA. I look like this because I'm alive, Reagan said. Because I've had experiences. Do you understand? Kath looked up at Reagan and couldn't help but smile. Reagan wore eyeliner all the way around her eyes like a hard-ass Kate Middleton, and even though she was bigger than most girls, big hips, big chest, wide shoulders, she carried herself like she was exactly the size everyone wanted to be, and everyone else went along with it, including Levi, and all the other guys who hung out in their room while Reagan finished getting ready. You don't, you don't, you don't get to look like this, Reagan said, pointing at her gray day face, hiding in your room all weekend. She noted. Cass said. So noted, Cass said. Let's do something today. Game day. The only smart thing to do is stay in our room and barricade the door. Do you have anything red? Reagan asked. If we put some red, we could just walk around campus and get free drinks. Cass's phone rang. She looked at it. Ren. She pushed ignore. I have to write today, she said. When they got back to their room, Reagan took a shower and put on fresh makeup, sitting on her bed, holding a mirror. She left and came back a few hours later with Target bags and a guy named Eric. Then she left again and didn't come back until the sun was setting, alone this time. Kath was still sitting at her desk. Enough, Reagan half shouted. Jesus, Kath said, turning toward her. It took a few seconds for Kath's eyes to focus on something that wasn't a computer screen. Get dressed, Reagan said, and don't argue with me. I'm not playing this game with you. What game? You're a sad little hermit, and it creeps me out. So get dressed. We're going bowling. Kath laughed. Bowling? All right, Reagan said. Like bowling is more pathetic than everything else you do. Kath pushed away from her desk. Her left leg had fallen asleep. She shook it out. I've never been bowling. What should I wear? You've never been bowling? Reagan was incredulous. Don't people bowl in Omaha? Kath shrugged. We're the old people, maybe. Wear whatever. Wear something that doesn't have Simon Snow on it, so that people won't assume your brain stopped developing when you were 7. Kath put on her red carry-on t-shirt with jeans and redid her ponytail. Reagan frowned at her. Do you have to wear your hair like that Like some kind of Mormon thing? I'm not Mormon. I said some kind. There was a knock at the door. Reagan opened it. Levi was standing there, practically bouncing. He was wearing a white t-shirt, and he'd drawn on it with a Sharpie, adding a collar and buttons down the front, plus a chest pocket with the Strikeout King written above it in a fancy script. Are we doing this? He said. Reagan and Levi were excellent bowlers. Apparently, there was a bowling alley in Arnold, not nearly as nice as this one, they said. The three of them were the only people under 40 bowling. The three of them were the only people under 40 bowling tonight, which didn't stop Levi from talking to absolutely every single person in the whole building. He talked to the guy who was spraying the shoes, couple, the retired couples in the next lane, the whole group of moms in some league who sent him away with ruffled hair and a pitcher of beer. Reagan acted like she didn't notice. I think there's a baby in the corner you forgot to kiss, Kath said to him. Where's a baby? His eyes just perked. No, she said. I was just. Levi set down the pitcher. He was balancing three glasses in his other hand. He let them drop on the table, and they landed without falling over. Why do you do that? What? He poured a beer and held it out to her. She took she took it without thinking, then set it down with distaste. Go so far out of your way to be nice to people. He smiled, but he was already smiling, so that just meant that he smiled more. Do you think I should be more like you? He said, and then looked fondly over at Reagan, who was scowling somehow voluptuously over the ball return, or her. Kath rolled her eyes. There's got to be a happy medium. I'm happy, he said, so this must be it. Kath bought herself a cherry coke from the bar and ignored the beer. Reagan bought 2 plates of drippy orange nachos. Levi bought 3 giant dill pickles that were so sour they made them all cry. Reagan won the first game. Then Levi won the second. Then for the third, he talked to the guy behind the counter into turning on the kitty bumpers for Kath. She still didn't pick up any strikes. Levi won again. Kath had just enough money to buy them all ice cream sandwiches from the vending machine. I really am the strikeout king, Levi said. Or, yeah, strikeout king, Levi said. Everything I write on my shirt comes true. It'll definitely come true tonight at Muggsy's, Reagan said. Levi laughed and crumpled up the ice cream wrapper to throw at her. The way they smiled at each other made Kath look away. They were so easy together, like they knew each other inside and out. Reagan was sweeter and meaner in, eh, with Levi than she ever was with Kath. Someone pulled on Kath's ponytail, and her chin jerked up. You're coming with us, Levi asked, right? Where? Oh, to Muggsy's. The night is young. And so am I, Kath said. I can't get into any bar. You'll be with us, he said. Nobody'll stop you. He's right, Reagan said. Muggsy's is for the college dropouts and the hopeless alcoholics. Freshmen never try to sneak in. Reagan put a cigarette in her mouth, but didn't light it. Levi took it and put it between his lips. Kath almost said yes. Uh, Instead, she shook her head. When Kath got back up to her room, she thought about calling Ren. She called her dad and said he sounded tired, but he wasn't trying to replace the stairs with a water slide, so that was an improvement, and he'd eaten 2 healthy choice meals for dinner. That sounds like a healthy choice, Kath told him, trying to sound encouraging. She did some reading for class, then she stayed up working on Carry On until her eyes burned. Then she stayed up working on Carry On until her eyes burned, and she knew she'd fall asleep as soon as she climbed into bed. Words are very powerful, Miss Posabelf said, stepping lightly between the rows of desks, and they take on more power than. And they take on more power. I'm just going to restart. Words are very powerful, Miss Posabelf said, stepping lightly between the rows of desks, and they take on More power, the more that they're spoken, the more that they're said and read and written in specific, consistent combinations. She stopped in front of Simon's desk and tapped up with a short jewel staff. Up, up, and away, she said clearly. Simon watched the floor move. Simon watched the floor move away from his feet. He grabbed at the edges of his desk, knocking over the pile of books and loose papers across the room. Basilson laughed. Miss Possibelf nudged Simon's trainer with her staff. Hold your horses. And his desk hovered 3 feet in the air. The key to casting a spell, she said, is tapping into that power. Not just saying the words, but summoning their meaning. Now, she said, open your magic words to page 4 and settle down there, Simon, please. From Chapter 5, Simon Snow and the Mage's Heir. Copyright 2001 by Gemma T. Leslie. All right. So that was a little bit shorter. I think I only got through 2 chapters there. But I think we're about, it's called, by the looks of it, I'd call that a fifth of the way through the book. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a good stopping point for either now or the rest of the night. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I'm glad that I started doing this. So I hope that you're enjoying this as well, and I will do the next one shortly.